Welcome back to another exciting episode of Starfleet Boy. I am obviously not Starfleet Boy, but he will be here momentarily. We're going to be discussing the Star Trek original series episode Errand of Mercy, famously known as the first appearance of the Klingons. So very, very exciting. I'm also joined by several super Trekkies right here that are ready to talk about this. So how the hell are y'all doing?
Doing well.
I'm good, Frank.
Thank you for asking.
Of course, we have Boat Wreck, PJ, up top, and then next to him is EGT. This is what I heard Starfleet Boy call Robbie, the Earl Grey Trekkie, EGT. And then Trek Cat, Ian.
Yeah.
So normally he would ask someone to do the summary of the episode at this point.
And that would be you, Father.
Oh, I got to do that part too?
Okay.
I can do it.
I don't care.
I didn't actually rewatch this episode this week, but I remember it pretty well. I can go through it. But yeah, the Federation is having some hostilities with the Klingon Empire, and there is a concern of possible full-out war between the two factions. There's a planet called Organia that the Federation does not want the Klingons to capture and use as a base where they could possibly launch attacks against the Federation. So the Enterprise is ordered to go there and make sure that Organia does not fall into the hands of the Klingons. They arrive at the planet and drop off Kirk and Spock, leaving Sulu in command of the Enterprise. And the Enterprise leaves, but Kirk and Spock meet the Organian people and their leader, Aelborn, and they're kind of...
the Enterprise doesn't leave yet. They stay in orbit until... And Kirk says if the Klingons arrive, just leave.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Well, they meet these weird kind of primitive people who don't seem very concerned about anything, and they're nice, but they're weird. And the Enterprise does leave, like PJ said, and Klingons arrive, so they disguise Kirk and Spock as just wear some of our clothes, and we'll just say oh, Spock is this Vulcan merchant that was passing through, and Kor, the first Klingon we ever see, who's on my shirt somewhere. I'm wearing a shirt of all the Klingons. But Kor beams down, and he's leading this Klingon force, and they eventually discover Kirk and Spock, and he doesn't quite buy that Spock's just passing through. He knows that Vulcans are a member of the Federation, and one thing leads to another, and eventually through a lot of cat and mouse type of back and forth conversations with Kirk, who he makes Kirk part of his occupational force, and then he kind of figures out that Kirk and Spock are the two Federation operatives on the planet, and he has them captured. He's actually going to use this device called the Klingon Mind Sifter that we never hear about again, but it can interrogate your brain, but it would also turn you into a vegetable. And the Organians don't want that to happen, so they they free Kirk and Spock, and then Kirk and Spock are oh well, the Klingons are gonna start executing Organians. We can't let that happen, so we got to go back and start freeing them. And the whole time the Organians is not really caring about any of this, but when Kirk and Spock make their attack back on Kor's compound, that's when the Organians finally reveal that they're actually these super powerful, super intelligent, godlike beings that actually force Kirk and Spock and Kor and all Klingons and all Federation everywhere to stop fighting. They take control of all the ships across space and make it where you can't even press the controls to engage in battle. The Organians even appear to the homeworlds of the Klingons and the Federation. So they're appearing on Earth, speaking to the Federation leaders, and appearing on Kronos, speaking to the Klingon leaders. And they basically tell them that we're so non-violent, and we're not going to allow y'all to destroy each other in a war. And one day you will actually become great allies and do great things together. yeah, which does happen, and they I guess come up with like a treaty or armistice or ceasefire, and that's the end of the episode.
Father, that was the greatest summary on Starfleet Boy ever of an episode. Congratulations.
Yeah.
I was really into it. Yeah, it was really good.
I skipped one important thing, but
Oh, go ahead.
I
Say
skipped
it.
two important things. But, well, the beginning of the episode, they actually blow up a Klingon ship.
Oh yeah, that was a good battle too. You're right. That was really
then
good.
it was
You skipped it for
also
the discussion.
Also, like the Organians like rat out Kirk, right? Because they're like they like turn him over, they snitch on him, and Kirk's like, "Why you did that?" But then like when they're like, "We're gonna use this mind sifter on him," then Elbor like comes to like set him free.
Well,
Right.
It was like confusing to Kirk.
The Organian immediately snitches on him to avoid Kirk going through the mind sifter.
Sifter
And
as well. Yeah.
just a note about that: Spock does undergo the procedure, and he's somehow able to resist it.
Resist it with his Vulcan mind techniques. That's right.
But
He said it.
Core
He was gonna kill
trusts Kirk.
someone.
Core trusts Kirk because he's not like the Organians. The Organians are pissing him off because they're smiling all the time and so complacent.
Yeah.
And Kirk is the only one of the quote-unquote Organians, and he has his suspicions early on, but he likes Kirk because of his defiance.
I remember now they were gonna kill Spock if Kirk didn't like turn over like the top secret knowledge of like the Starfleet defenses.
They probably used the Mind Ripper.
to tell me that.
Jill says, I was really hoping the Mind Ripper would be mentioned again in Discovery to explain how Tyler's mind was transferred to Voq, but it wasn't. I would have liked that.
Theory. I remember a lot of people talking about that.
It would have been cool. Speaking of, since we're already on the topic of Discovery, first of all, also thank you, all of you, for your patience. I'm hypoglycemic and my food was late today, so I have to eat it. Otherwise, I could faint or something on camera, which you don't want to see. So I got to eat my late lunch. Thank you, and thank you to the cook. It was a delicious chicken nuggets.
No chicken nuggets.
Do you guys eat chicken nuggets in Texas?
I'm sure a lot of people do.
Okay.
I wouldn't like call it like a delicacy, but
we have gator nuggets in Florida. They're really
gator
delicious.
nuggets. I've ate gator before.
Yeah, gator's good.
Some
cod
some
tongues.
fried gator.
Cod
He
tongues.
tastes like we cow tongue.
Fried cod tongues are absolutely delicious.
Wow.
It's so good.
I'll have to try that sometime.
We're waiting for
Whenever
the
That's a
Newfoundland.
Newfie.
folks
That's
from
a
the
Newfie
UK to
Irish
top
thing,
this. I think haggis already tops all of that, if I'm
Yeah.
not mistaken. All right. Anyways, sorry for that tangent.
Actually, I haven't ate anything today because it's like freezing and I'm out of groceries and I don't want to drive anywhere because like the
We
roads
need
are
to send a
terrible.
shuttlecraft to Fathery. What? We need.
Yeah, it never ever gets this cold here for this long. It's very weird.
We're hoping there's a cold front because of it. Speaking of Discovery, does this episode mark the end of the Klingon War with the Federation? Was it still going on throughout since
No.
Discovery? Like,
The-
was it?
No, I think this
There
is
were-
reigniting the Klingon. It could
Yeah.
have potentially reignited the Klingon War.
Yeah, they were on the this episode is them and the Federation literally being on the verge, and the fact that it starts with that battle and they blow up the Klingon ship. I mean, that's grounds for war right there. So
And if
I mean,
you,
and it's so fascinating that it wasn't for these like godlike beings, there would be like so much death. So the Organians are really like saviors in a way.
yeah, and if you keep in mind like how I would say like almost like too like destructive the Klingon War was in season 1 of Discovery, but it definitely would be like high stakes, for these people. They all would have been alive 10 years earlier when that happened, so they would definitely be like, yeah, we do not want a repeat of that. The stakes are very, very high. It makes you wonder though what happened when like the Organians leave, because at some point they stop. Like in Star Trek 6, there's whole other concerns with the Klingons. So like at one point the Organians stopped enforcing their peace treaty between the two.
A story yet
That's
to be
actually-
told.
Yeah, that's actually mentioned in part in the Vanguard series of books, because they talk about the Organian Treaty, and then basically the collapse of that treaty is there because obviously the Vanguard is a huge space station, and it gets destroyed by the Klingons. So it is in that whole raft of books, which is it's one of the best series of books in Star Trek that I've read.
Oh, very cool. The Organians come back. I haven't seen the episode, but in Enterprise.
They're mentioned in Enterprise.
Oh, they're mentioned. Okay.
Yeah.
Or is it?
Well, the
Organians
Organians also mentioned that they. Sorry, Fathery. Go on.
I remember they do actually have Organians in Enterprise though, but they're like possessing people, and like testing. They were like possessing people on the crew. It was in season 4. I can't remember the name of the episode though.
Oh, okay. So Tass is backing that up with they do come back in Enterprise.
Yeah.
I could have sworn I read that they did, but I didn't read the description. I haven't seen the episode yet, so I'm excited to catch that one now.
Yeah, it was
maybe
an
I'll watch it
episode
today.
where it had like no guest stars, and it was like a bottle show, like all shot like on the ship, and it was just like they would just like possess some of the characters to like observe what they were doing, and it was obviously like a really cheap episode.
Okay.
They didn't spend hardly any money on it, you know, like no guest stars, no like additional sets or anything, but it was an episode about people like coming back to the ship with some type of like exposure to a virus or something, and they were gonna have to like be quarantined, and they were testing the humans to see what would they do. Would they be willing to like destroy their ship to like save some of their people, or like would they be like willing to like kill their people to contain the whatever they were exposed to? I don't remember that one very well, but yeah, it was the Organians.
And they also come back in DS9 comic book apparently, and just like Tass was saying earlier, there's like a ton of whatever's considered like the non-official stuff that they appear in, like books and things like that, and like what you mentioned. But I would have liked to have seen them come back in Star Trek: The Next Generation. I think they would have been a fun counter to Q, or maybe they're like related to the Q. I don't know. They're like very powerful, it seems. They seem to have like similar powers, like where they can actually like traverse the cosmos or be in multiple places at once, and like, you know, make weapons inoperable and do these like magical kinds of things. So I think it would have been interesting to see them back. Did Q kill all the other great species of the galaxy, and then they're the only ones left by the time?
Them. I mean, maybe there was a war. Like, maybe there's like a god war.
I believe that there's
between
like
TOS and TNG.
Charlie, he wants me to say Beta Canon. Say Beta Canon. All right, I said it.
Beta Canon.
Canon.
Canon. Canon.
There, I've said it. Let's talk about Mr. John Calicos. Did you guys know about him? I knew him as Baltar
John
on
Calicos.
Battlestar.
Yeah.
Calicos, thank you. Calicos. Did I spell it wrong?
No, you spelled it right.
Okay, cool. I said it wrong. John Calicos, I knew him from Battlestar Galactica. I was so excited to realize that when I was like, why do I know him? He's phenomenal as Core, and I remember in Deep Space Nine when he comes back, of course, in the refitted makeup. he also does a good job. Yeah, in the Sword of Chaos.
He's in 3 episodes of DS9.
What do you guys think of the debut of the Klingons and everything?
Blood Oath.
He was the
Sword of
blueprint.
Empire, and yeah,
they follow it pretty good.
Originally, he was going to come back like every season. Like whenever they do a Klingon episode, it was going to be John Calicos' Core. Yeah, the original plan.
Although they were supposed to be a one-off villain, right? Like, weren't they supposed to just appear the one time and they were really popular?
Hunt the albino Klingon.
What about the albino Klingon? That's Blood Oath. Yeah,
Blood Oath. That's
season
the one
2.
that Core's in.
Core and Kang and Koloth are all in it.
They all come
Oh,
back.
yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I remember. I gotta watch.
They're
that
all
one.
on my T-shirt.
Yeah.
But and then he was in Once More Into the Breach, I think is the name of it, in season 7 of DS9.
I believe so.
And he
It's cool.
core appears in the animated series as well.
Yes.
In what the hell's the name of that one? Where they go into like that micro universe where they're trapped. But it's not John Calicus doing the voice; it's James Doohan,
Yeah.
because he did almost all the voices
Doohan.
on that show.
Yeah, I think
Very
him and
cool.
Margell Barrett, they did a lot of the voices in that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
I think John
Klingons.
Calicus he was the blueprint for Klingons to come. I think he really did start the ball rolling, and you can tell that the others sort of took his lead as such. And even going into TNG, still the way he was as a Klingon, I think he really was the blueprint for all Klingons to come.
Yeah, I didn't like the Klingons when I was a kid. I thought they were scary and mean, and I had all the same prejudices that Captain Kirk expresses about them in this episode. But as I got older, I started appreciating the around the films, especially. I think Christopher Lloyd did it for me. He was the first Klingon. I was like, oh, he's an interesting Klingon, like, you know. But then going back and watching it, I really appreciate the performance that John Calicos delivers. It's just really, really delightful. And you can see how, like, what you said, like, every Klingon performance after him is basically, like, modeled in some way after him. We lost another good Klingon. John Calicos was passed away in 2000, and just recently Christopher Plummer died as well, who played General Chang, who was very memorable Klingon as well. There's a interesting video. I started to watch it. I couldn't finish watching it, but if you guys check out Jesse Gender, there's something problematic about the Klingons in the TOS era, which I'd completely forgotten about until I saw this episode. I was like, oh wow, they're painting him. He's like spray painted brown, and so are most of the Klingons. Like, it's very clear that these are like white actors because of other things I've seen them in, and it gets like even, you know, like crazier. Like, they have like really dark makeup in later seasons with the Klingons, where it's really obvious. And also just some of the stereotypes. It's called racial coding. I didn't know much about the subject, but I learned a lot about it in a short period of time, and it makes sense that that was happening. And I was like, oh man, that's terrible. But I think Star Trek, what's interesting about the Klingons in particular is that, first of all, they do have that like loophole of like, these are aliens, and so, you know, and also it's like a show that was filmed when this was in more common practice than it is today. Like, it seemed people were able to get away with this kind of thing and stuff like that. But I think that's it for some reason, and it's because of the performances, I think, and also just because the Klingons have become something else now, that it kind of backward rewrites these kind of bad choices, for me anyways, where I'm like, well, you know what, I can give Star Trek a pass on this one thing, but not too many passes. Fortunately, Star Trek doesn't need a pass too many times.
I understand why they'll never go back. They kind of went back to it in Enterprise, that kind of thing. But I think you can reimagine it as the Klingons from Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country, are different from a lot of Klingons you see in the movies. And I imagine those with the subtle ridges and the more subtle makeup as like the TOS Klingons. I can retroactively go back and imagine them that way to explain the Klingons that don't have the very prominent ridges or like distinct features, but like
some of these dudes don't have
a little
anything.
more human. Like Christopher Plummer looks more human than Klingon in that movie, and some of the other actors kind of did too, and that was okay. And to me, I kind of imagine that's what TOS Klingons from the show look like if I were to reimagine it in my head. I don't know.
I think the Klingons are more gold if you look at a lot of the makeup in some of it's more of a gold-coloured makeup that they put,
or a bronzing.
later
It's like a bronze type of
bronzing, yeah. And then they start to go dark. I mean, with Kang, he really was really
in season
dark.
3.
Yeah.
With
Yeah,
Kang
Day of
and
the Dove.
Kalis both. So then we see
Yeah,
Kalis
I
and the
think-
Savage Curtain, and
Yeah,
they went
I
pretty
think in
dark
Day
with,
of the Dove
with him
he really
too.
was. Yeah.
Oh yeah, so this is a good question. Why does Core have ridges in Deep Space Nine?
Genetic therapy over the years.
Yeah.
or ridge implants. They talked about that a little bit in Enterprise season 4 when they established the whole reason for the flathead Klingons. They say that like, yeah, well, there would be like alternatives for people where like, they say genetic therapy, don't they? They say like genetic therapy would be a possibility, and also like possible like ridge implants would be an option.
And we know from Discovery that the Klingons are totally into messing around with genes and, you know, augmentation
And khakis and stuff.
and
There's that.
khakis and stuff like that.
It
so-
would be interesting if Strange New Worlds tries to explore any of this stuff.
I would love for Strange New Worlds to just show us a variety of Klingon designs that have been utilized over the years. Not all like blended into one thing, but like certain factions that probably almost like in The Expanse where humans grow up in certain parts or certain planets, they evolve a little bit differently, say. So that would be cool, but I don't know about New Trek ever going back to the Klingons. They've avoided them so far since Discovery season.
It'll
2,
happen
so.
eventually. Like it might be a
Hopefully.
few years from now, but it'll happen. I don't think like we'll be talking
Lower
about
decks.
this 30 years from now and just be like, there hasn't been a live action Klingon in 30 years. Like it'll happen someday.
I'm sure there's
25 years.
there's an Enterprise two-parter with the Klingon say that there's a disease. It's causing
The
things-
augment virus. I haven't seen the episode yet, but I know about. I know
Isn't
all
the
about
augment virus the cure to the disease, though?
it. Oh right.
Saying about what PJ was saying about different Klingons, I mean, harking back to Beta Canon as well, they actually say like the non-ridge Klingons were sort of a lower form of Klingon-y, if for want of a word, that the ridged Klingons were like they were the like the master race type thing, and the non-ridged ones were sort of frowned upon and sort of looked with derision. If you look in Beta Canon as well, I think they tried to write into that in sort of later books as well.
I'm sure it's not the last we'll see of the Klingons, and I'm excited about Strange New Worlds delivering some Klingon stories as well. And I do think that it would be great to have like a explanation. Did Ian freeze, or is he just closing his eyes? I thought you froze for a second. Sorry.
He's frozen.
He is frozen. Oh no! Come back to us, Ian. You're out of phase.
I'm here.
Wait.
I'm here.
Awesome.
No, I'm talking
And now
about Father.
Father's doing it too.
No, I'm
It's so
not.
distracting. He was doing. He's doing it on purpose. And I love that idea about seeing all the different Klingons like kind of represented in Star Trek. I actually am starting to like the Discovery Klingons because they are more alien than any of the Klingons before. But I wish they could do like something clever in remastering Star Trek again. Let's do it again, right? And then put
What?
some
What do you
sprinkle
mean?
sprinkle
What?
some like
What are you
disco
saying?
Klingons. Let's sprinkle some disco Klingons in the movies. Let's put them in the. Look at me, Jamie.
No, that'll never happen.
You mean George Lucas? Do what George
Yes.
Lucas did to Star Wars?
Yes,
That was
Star
a bad
Trek.
thing. That was not a good idea. Did not make those movies better.
Is
No,
anyone
you
with
could-
me on this?
You,
No.
You could go back to Errand of Mercy and have like CGI Targs.
Yes.
Yeah, running
Exactly.
around in the
Walking around.
background.
That's what I want. I want to do it.
That'd be great.
All right. Sorry, that was a derailment that I did not mean to go on, but I kind of do want it. I think it'd be fun, like in Star Trek V, to have Discovery era Klingons, on the ship, and stuff like that. What was that commander's name, by the way?
Which one? The general or the
No, the kid, like the younger one. Do you guys remember?
I don't remember his name. But if you want to talk about like blackface on Klingons, like I was surprised when I saw what that actor looks like, and he's like this blonde white California dude, looks like some surfer.
Oh, really?
Bro. Yeah.
They were still doing it until all the way up until like Star Trek V?
Yeah, like they darkened him up pretty good.
Oh, wow. That's insane.
I can't remember that dude's name. He had the big hair.
I mean, in Star Trek V, it's more of a prosthetic thing. I mean, it's not like they just had a white guy and spray painted him. I mean, there was a lot of work into that makeup.
It's nothing. I don't think it was done with any harmful intent. But like, if you watch this video about racial coding, I think it's something that was built into kind of like the psyche. It was like something that was unintentionally, and I agree with it. We could talk about it more on like a Starfleet Boy After Dark or something like that after everyone's seen Jesse's video. By the way, it's called, and I even took a note of it because it's really
Claw.
fat.
Captain
It's called,
Claw.
Klingons and Racial Coding by Jesse Gender. So go check that video out. I also put a link to it in the description. Is that like there or is it over there? I'm not sure where it is.
Yeah. That is the guy. There you go. That's the guy that plays Captain Claw.
No way.
Yeah, I was very surprised when I first discovered what he looked like.
And I think there's exceptions, PJ. Like, I think there's sometimes where, like,
I had
for example,
no idea who the actor was who played him.
Yeah, I had no idea too. I just took it for granted that he was a dark-skinned man. Actually, like if I didn't know Christopher,
his name's Todd
you have
Bryant.
you have to give kudos to the makeup departments on Star Trek, because if I didn't know who Christopher Lloyd was, I wouldn't know that he was like, very fair-skinned as well, based on how good it looked. Like the prosthetics that he was wearing, like they toned his skin darker as well. So I think that's like,
yeah, but that was more
really
sympathetic. They didn't make him look black, for want of a better word. It was more sympathetic with his skin, and the same with
you could almost
Chang
study the makeup in Star
Gorgon.
Trek for Klingons as it evolves, as like more progressive like thought kind of enters Hollywood. Like you can almost see like Star Trek as like a historical document of like how this racial coding was once acceptable and almost unintentionally, to where it became like part of like like a subconscious thing, to where now we're actively dismantling it in newer versions of Star Trek, which I love. I love these kinds of topics. I don't know. I know they're a bit controversial, but it's fascinating to explore them sometimes. What do you guys think?
Yeah, it's as I said, it's always been they've always gone on about issues, but I think obviously visually, it's shown through time how TV and films have changed through the years.
Absolutely. All right, so we talked about the Organians. We talked a lot about the Klingons, and like,
I think we should discuss that Kirk is a complete dick in this episode.
He is, isn't he? He always just hated the Klingons, it seems like.
It's not just the Klingons; it's how he treats the Organians, like saying things like, "I have no love for your society, but I'm going to die."
He's mad that they won't fall in line. He's mad that they won't rally behind him to oppose the Klingons, and it's very, very much inspired by the Cold War at the time between the United States and the Soviet Union, but in some ways it's kind of self-critical, because there was more hawkish elements that were a little bit more like warmongery, who were more open to fighting wars with the Soviets, but there you have this big fear of mutually ensured destruction from nuclear weapons, and this is like a little bit of a critical take at that, because the episode kind of acknowledges that Kirk is in the wrong. And it's very rare to see that in Star Trek. Normally Kirk is kind of like this perfect hero, but here it's like no, Captain Kirk, you screwed up. Like no, like like you shouldn't be so eager to resort to violence, and we're not going to allow you to do that because it'll get both your people destroyed.
Kirk and Core talking at the end are talking about their rights to wage war, basically, and the Organian calls them out and is like, "What? You have the right to kill millions of people?" And Kirk's like, "Oh shit, you got me on that one."
Yeah.
It's
And it
yeah,
does
it's
kind of
he
fit
he
with-
just treats the Organians with utter contempt.
Yeah,
throughout
I
the
didn't
episode.
like it. I didn't like that aspect of it because I actually like. What was the line that the one Organian says? He says like we find interference to be like the most abhorrent, thing, and he's also not being respectful if they are a class D or what did they say, like a class D minus on the Richter scale of civilizations. That's what Spock pegs them as at first.
That's not very good, is it? D minus.
Yeah, but then they have the prime directive to like, they shouldn't be interfering in the first place. So Kirk's like totally going against even like the Federation. He shouldn't have like blown up the weapons depot, sorry, and like done all that to incite, to force the hand of the Organians to get into the fight, so to speak. It was really he was wrong from the start. Yeah.
But I think now, if we want to retcon in the Klingon War and Discovery and how bad that was, like Earth almost got attacked.
It's true.
And would have probably been obliterated. That might explain why Kirk is being such an asshole here. Is that like he doesn't want something like that to happen again?
Well, you don't even need that backstory to explain why he's an asshole. It just in the episode without any other context that he hates the Klingons. The Klingons are bad people, and it's that simple. But I think the Discovery War with the Klingons kind of adds to the motivation now.
Yeah, it puts another layer on there.
Yeah.
What do you
Does
think, Robbie?
reinforce it, yeah.
Well, about Kirk, you were saying earlier, I do think that flawed characters are more interesting. It's quite nice to get all the sides to a character and not be portrayed as perfect.
That's true. I love Spock in this episode, and I want my role-playing game character to be a Vulcan merchant. I've decided. So whenever we do our Star Trek RPG, I'll have a Vulcan merchant character. What did you guys think of Spock in this episode?
He's great as usual.
Not used enough.
Yeah.
No, he wasn't used enough. I thought he was great though, from the perspective of like having someone. He brought the logic, I would say, that Kirk was lacking in this episode. Even though he does agree with him and does also say that the fight is unavoidable. I think he was a lot cooler headed than Kirk was.
I just like the fact that they give you the knowledge that there are Vulcan merchants that like are about the quadrant, and you could probably use that in Strange New Worlds.
Do we ever get Vulcan merchants like in TNG or anything? I can't remember at this moment.
I don't think so.
It changes so much throughout TOS. They talk about monetary type things like wages and paying for that because if you Devil in the Dark, they're saying it's going to become a more profitable enterprise and things like that. So there is talk, but when you get to TNG, it's money's out the window. It's more utopian and everything else like that.
In this episode, Kirk says that what does he say? He says Starfleet paid a lot of money for our training.
Yeah, do you know how much the fleet has invested?
Let's get their money's worth.
Like that?
Yeah, let's get their money's worth.
Money's worth, yeah.
Yeah.
I wish the remastered had a fleet arriving, and that we saw like a fleet of both, the Klingon and the Federation fleet above Organia. It would have been cool.
It would be too far removed from the original. They have they can only go
I'm
so
doing my
far
Lucas
with
thing again.
changing things.
I want us to
Yep.
see. I want to see a shot of the Organian on Earth and on the Klingon homeworld.
So they don't have the original audio recordings for the original series. The only audio they have is what was actually like in the episode. So they can't add anything to the episode with these special edition versions. They can't add anything that extends the length of the episode because they don't have like any audio to like put over it. So they'd have to like create like brand new audio for that stuff. And that's why they never extend the length of any episodes. They only add stuff on top of the existing footage.
Oh, gotcha. Well, with the technology we have today, we can remaster it and have the
Like,
Starfleet Boy.
what's the
the Starfleet Boy, the advanced cut, the new
Remastered.
I'm pushing all of Bobby's
holographic
buttons
8K.
right.
what would be the advantage of that?
Just to just to do it. There's
I
no
mean,
advantage.
you could if you wanted to, you could like give some money to some like some animators and be like, hey, like make me like a little fan film of like a bunch of like Federation and Klingon ships arriving.
This is true. This is true. Did you guys notice that when Kor and Kirk are talking in that one scene, and he asks him for the position of the Federation, the Starfleet, he says, "Go climb a tree." I just like couldn't help but
It's the prequel
wonder,
to Go Climb a Rock.
Yeah, exactly. I couldn't help but wonder that. Like, it was really, really funny. I totally didn't remember that Kirk ever even said that, but I love it. I'm gonna start saying it from now on.
I'm gonna tell you to go climb a tree.
I'm gonna start using that on Twitter all the time. What else did I put in my notes? I thought.
Do you think Kirk had a shirt? Do you think he had that on a shirt? You know, like "Go climb a rock." Do you think he had "Go climb a tree" on a shirt?
For sure, 100%. It's underneath. Oh, Sulu in charge. I wanted to talk about that.
Yeah.
That was
Oh,
cool. And of course, they in the 2009. No, sorry, the Star Trek Into Darkness. They kind of played off that a little bit. I think. Do you think they were referencing this moment, or was it more like something later?
They've never given anyone, besides Spock, I guess, like big moments on the bridge. It's kind of just like them having to deal with some crap.
Yeah,
And like and calling down to the captain is like, "Captain, yeah, it's messed up here."
They've put
yeah,
Scotty
not
in
doing well.
command by this point. Scotty's been in command before.
Yeah, he has.
I like Scotty in command.
And then Mr. DeSalle gets command a couple times.
Who?
That's right, DeSalle.
Mr.
DeSalle.
DeSalle, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. That guy.
And will Uhura get a moment? No, isn't it? Or does
In the
she get a
Lorelei
moment?
signal.
He gets
in
the
the
moment
animated
in the
series.
animated series.
Oh, in the animated series. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
They
Chris
should have given
says,
her a moment in the films too at some point. But anyway, yeah.
The Organian Effect is similar to the beings in Charlie X, Trelane's parents, Squire of Gothos, and several other Force beings. I like that you called them Force beings in TNG, like the Dauphin, Deja Q, Transformations, and Imaginary Friend. Thanks. There's a lot. I forgot how many in Star Trek the original series. There's just a lot of these like ethereal type of like
Flying light bulbs,
non-corporeal flying. Yeah, exactly. It's like so far in season 1. By the way, this was episode 27 or 26, I think, that we're on.
The Child is another example.
Mm-hmm.
The one where Data, O'Brien, and Troy are possessed by like non-corporeal criminals who are trying to escape from a prison.
Also, the Prophets from Deep Space Nine.
Oh, of course, the Prophets. Yep. There's a lot in Star Trek. I guess there are some a lot in TNG as well. I didn't realize the TNG era had a lot.
In the Gorn episode, there's godlike beings.
Right, the Metrons. I like the Metrons. They're cool. They're like having parties on Ibiza. Daniel Co says Viju Tubble. Is that like a Klingon, Daniel? Viju Tubble. Maybe? No?
I mean, screw that tribble.
Screw that Tubble.
That's what Kirk was going to be turned into if they used the machine on him.
Jill, we were blessed to have you for as long as you were here. We knew you were going to be more interested in the vote, and we heard in advance that you give this episode 10 out of 10. See you later, too. Father, he's like yawning like big time. You're gonna. It's so contagious.
I'm sorry, I do that sometimes.
Last time didn't it happen? EGT and I, we were like yawning because of you. It's like, or was it because of this topic?
No, he's empathetic. So when you start yawning, he starts yawning. He has empathy.
Yes, it's true. I really like the whole episode also, Jill. It was really good. And so I think to save Father, to let him have his moment, we'll go into closing thoughts. Like, does anyone have anything else to talk about this episode before we head into the ratings?
I'll say that they do kind of tweak the Klingons after this, but I mean this does a lot of the heavy lifting and like setting them up as kind of like the primary threat to the Federation at this point in the Star Trek universe. They had plans, like I mentioned, of like using Core more. Like he would come back in The Trouble with Tribbles, and he would come back, and like all the Klingon episodes were going to be with him, and it makes me wonder like what that alternate timeline would look like, where they did just keep using Core. What if like General Chang in Star Trek 6 was actually Core, and they just had him as like Kirk's main enemy like all along, and maybe he would have been the Klingon that kills his son in Star Trek 3 and stuff. But I'm kind of glad that didn't happen, because it allowed John Calicus to kind of like set like the template, but then immediately after that you have different actors come on and put like their own spin on it, and it kind of made the Klingons very fleshed out early on, and the coming out of the original series, and it all begins here. So you got to give this episode a lot of credit for setting all the later Klingon stuff up.
I would like to play a Klingon on Star Trek. It would be cool.
It's pronounced
Imagine
Klingon.
that being very
Klingon.
hot
Oh, yeah.
and very sticky.
Klingon. And I would like to be the Discovery Klingon that they use to like insert into all the later Star Treks. Like randomly you see me walking by engineering in Voyager or something, just somewhere in the Discovery Klingon.
Like Picard is being tortured in Chain of Command. He's like, "There are full lights!" And you just like walk across the background.
In my disco Klingon. In fact, if there's an artist out there who would be willing to re-render me, I'll send you a mugshot to re-render me as a disco Klingon. Father's laughing. He's like, "I'll do it."
I was just thinking you could reuse that line from Star Wars. Aren't you a little short for a Klingon?
It's true. I think I would be short for a Klingon. It's very true. Any other closing thoughts? Robbie, do you have anything to take us out on?
I've not watched this episode in a while, and I enjoyed it a lot more than I did the first time, or maybe my memory was just hazy.
Good. I'm glad you enjoyed it more this time. PJ, Ian?
Are we doing ratings now?
No, I just wanted to know if you had any more things to say about
no,
this episode, but no?
No, I just really enjoyed it, and I think it's
It's a good episode.
one of the best.
Yeah. For me, it is a good episode. It's just an overriding bit. Kirk is a dick. They don't use Spock enough, and Calicus is just he is the consummate Klingon.
I know I tend to defend Kirk a lot, but he does say he's embarrassed, and I thought that was a great little moment at the end where
I think they used that just to redeem him, and just that little bit of redemption at the end.
It's true. I also do like the closing line where Spock's like, "There's nothing to be embarrassed about. It took millions of years for the Organians to evolve past physical form, etc."
Ooh, yes.
And then he's like, so in a sense, like the odds were, stacked or whatever, and then Kirk's like, "No, actually they rated the game," which is really really a true statement about what they did. They were really knowing the reveal now you're like, oh yeah, this is what happens. But the first time, it is quite a shocker to realize, oh yeah, these these guys like really didn't need any of the interference, and they were just tolerating these amoebas doing their things the whole time until it got too out of hand, and they had to be like, all right, settle down, children, and and so it's a really good moral.
Mythbusters has just reminded me. He said about the planet looks like a medieval set, and they used the same set in the cage.
Oh,
if you'll see where Kirk and Spock shoot the Klingons, that is the same set that where Pike is fighting that giant alien thing in the cage.
Yeah. On Rigel 4 or 5 or 3 or whatever the planet. It was one of the Rigel planets.
It's just because he mentioned it about
cool.
the medieval set that it reminded me that it was from the cage.
Yeah, it's interesting how like they're using these sets with like from these other kind of like productions and stuff like that. And I did like the stock footage of like I think it's like an Italian castle or something like that on the hill that they keep using for the like the main compound or whatever. So yeah, that was very cool. But let's see here, a couple more comments. Kang from Day of the Dove shows back up in Voyager and flashback that took place during Star Trek 6. Oh, okay, that's cool. I did not.
Yeah,
realize
the
that.
only actor to appear in the original series, Deep Space Nine, and Voyager, all 3.
Oh wow, okay.
Which is weird because they have a lot of TOS people in DS9 in Trials and Tribulations, but the 2 that are in Voyager in flashback, Rand and Sulu, neither one is in Trouble with Tribbles.
Oh, right on. I totally didn't realize this until now, but Kor is wearing or rather Worf later will be wearing the same kind of sash, the same exact looking
Baldric.
sash. Or Baldric, thank you, in season 1 of TNG. Whoa, very nice. That is totally true. I remember from the figure. I have it somewhere here.
Kor
right.
or Worf?
The same sash that Kor is wearing. Worf has like it's almost exactly the same with like, it's like clothy, it's gold, and it's like got I think even the same little pendant on it.
I'm gonna start wearing a Baldric around. Just
it's not a bad look.
You know.
I sometimes wear a harness, and it like makes you feel really like cool, like, you know. PJ's like giving me this look. I'll explain later. Anyways, what's our my rating for this episode is a 9 out of 10.
10.
Robbie?
You're up, BGT.
7. I'm not sure about this one because I've not watched in a while. I'll give it an 8.
And Ian,
I'll give it. I'm going to go 9. I'm going to go same as you. I'm going to go with a 9.
I'll go 9 climbing trees out of 10.
9 go climb trees out of 10. Excellent. We got a bunch of 10s out of 10s from Daniel, 8 out of 10 from Tass, and then I think that's all the ratings. Oh, and we knew about the 10 out of 10. Oh, look at this. Hold on, let me put you full screen. There you go.
Yeah, they had to make Michael Dorns go on his right shoulder so that you could still have his Starfleet badge on the left side. I bet that's why they flipped the side.
It would have been cool to have a badge over it too, though. I would have been cool with that.
Maybe they tried that; it didn't look as good.
And it didn't look as good. Very nice. Well done. All right, guys. Thank you so much for joining us for another discussion. Next week is the alternative factor.
Ooh.
All right, we got a preview of what to expect for our next week's discussion. Live long and prosper. Thank you everyone for joining us, and we'll see you next time.